The starship descended through the crimson haze of Zytherian's atmosphere, its sleek metallic frame glinting against the alien sun's dying rays. Captain Elias Varn stood at the helm, his weathered hands gripping the control panel as the ship shuddered through turbulent air currents. The planet below was a kaleidoscope of colors, emerald forests merging with amethyst deserts, rivers of liquid silver snaking across the terrain. It was beautiful, but Elias knew beauty often masked danger. Behind him, his crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had been tracking this system for weeks, drawn by faint signals that hinted at an ancient civilization capable of interstellar communication. The mission was supposed to be routine: establish contact, gather data, and return home. But now, as they approached the coordinates where the signals originated, Elias felt the weight of something far greater pressing down on him. The ship touched down on a plateau overlooking a sprawling city unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Towering crystalline spires refracted light into a prism of hues, while streets made of what appeared to be living metal pulsed with energy. Hovering vehicles zipped between buildings, leaving trails of shimmering mist in their wake. And then there were the inhabitants, tall, slender beings with translucent skin that seemed to ripple like water under the sun. Their eyes, large and luminous, held an intelligence that made Elias feel both awed and profoundly small. As the ramp lowered and Elias stepped out, he was immediately surrounded by a delegation of these aliens. They moved with a fluid grace, their long limbs folding into intricate gestures that seemed almost ritualistic. One of them stepped forward, a figure taller than the rest, adorned with golden filigree etched directly into its skin. Its presence commanded authority, and Elias instinctively straightened his posture. "You are human," the being said, its voice resonating not just in his ears but deep within his chest. It wasn't spoken so much as projected, a symphony of tones layered together. "You have come far." Elias nodded, swallowing hard. "We seek peaceful contact. We mean no harm." The alien tilted its head, studying him with those unblinking eyes. Then it turned, gesturing for him to follow. The others parted ranks, allowing Elias and two members of his crew to walk alongside the leader. As they moved through the city, Elias couldn't help but marvel at the seamless integration of technology and nature. Plants grew from structures as if they were one organism, glowing softly in the twilight. Strange creatures flitted overhead, resembling a cross between birds and insects, their wings scattering sparks of light. They arrived at a massive structure at the heart of the city, a palace, though it defied any conventional definition of the word. Its walls shifted and changed shape, as if alive, responding to some unseen force. Inside, the air hummed with power, and the floor beneath their feet radiated warmth. At the center of the hall stood another figure, seated upon a throne carved from what looked like solidified starlight. This was the king. His form was even more regal than the others, his body encased in armor that shimmered like molten gold. Around his neck hung a pendant emitting a soft, pulsating glow, and beside him stood a young woman, or rather, a young alien. She was breathtaking, her features delicate yet otherworldly, her hair cascading in waves of liquid silver. Her gaze met Elias's, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. The king rose, his movements deliberate and commanding. "I am Zuendar," he announced, his voice echoing throughout the chamber. "Ruler of Zytherian. You dare trespass upon my domain, human." Elias bowed slightly, careful to maintain respect. "We came seeking understanding, not conquest. If we've overstepped—" "Silence!" Zuendar's tone cut through the air like a blade. He descended from his throne, approaching Elias with measured steps. "You bring war to our skies, whether you intend it or not. Your kind has a history of destruction, of taking what does not belong to you. I cannot allow your presence here without challenge." Elias frowned, confused. "Challenge?" Zuendar stopped mere inches away, towering over him. "Yes. A test of worthiness. Defeat me, and you may take what is most precious to me." He gestured toward the young woman standing silently beside the throne. "My daughter, Lyrian. She will be yours to claim." A collective gasp rippled through the room, though Elias couldn't tell if it came from his crew or the assembled aliens. He stared at Zuendar, disbelief warring with alarm. "What? That's absurd." I didn't come here for... It is done, Zoendar interrupted, his voice firm. Refuse, and you leave empty-handed, branded as cowards. Accept, and prove yourself worthy, or perish trying. Elias glanced at Lyrian, who watched him with an expression he couldn't decipher. There was curiosity there, yes, but also something else, something deeper, unreadable. He turned back to Zoendar, his mind racing. This was madness, a proposition born of arrogance or desperation. Yet refusing would mean abandoning the mission entirely, leaving behind the chance to forge an alliance with a civilization far advanced beyond Earth's capabilities. I accept, he said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Zoendar smiled, a cold, predatory curve of his lips. Then prepare yourself, human. For tomorrow, we fight. The arena stretched before Elias like a vast, alien coliseum, its walls rising impossibly high into the sky. The air crackled with anticipation, charged by the murmurs of thousands of spectators gathered to witness the duel. He could feel their gazes weighing on him, probing, judging. Most unnerving was the silence, the absence of cheers or jeers, replaced instead by an eerie stillness that seemed to amplify every breath, every heartbeat. Standing opposite him, Zoendar exuded an aura of effortless dominance. Clad in ceremonial armor forged from materials unknown to human science, the alien king radiated power. His stance was relaxed yet poised, as though victory were already assured. Beside him lay an array of weapons, each gleaming with intricate designs that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Weapons of Zytherian, crafted for battles fought under rules Elias had yet to fully comprehend. Elias, in contrast, wore only his standard-issue combat suit, its fabric worn and patched after months of space travel. No enhancements, no exotic armaments, just the tools and training he had brought with him. His own weapon, a plasma rifle strapped to his back, felt woefully inadequate compared to the arsenal displayed before him. Yet, he reminded himself, this was not just about firepower, it was about proving worthiness. Strength alone would not suffice. The first challenge began without warning. Zoendar raised a hand, and the ground beneath them shifted violently, splitting open to reveal a labyrinth of jagged crevices and floating platforms suspended mid-air. Without hesitation, the king leapt onto one of the platforms, beckoning Elias to follow. The human warrior hesitated only briefly before launching himself after his opponent, his boots landing heavily on the unstable surface. The platform swayed and bucked unpredictably, forcing Elias to rely on reflexes honed during countless skirmishes across hostile planets. Each leap required precise timing, every step calculated to avoid plummeting into the abyss below. Zoendar moved with unnatural agility, gliding effortlessly from one platform to another, always staying just ahead of Elias. It became clear that physical prowess was merely the beginning of what this trial demanded. As they reached the center of the arena, the platform stabilized, forming a circular stage illuminated by beams of light descending from above. Zoendar turned to face Elias, drawing a weapon from his side, a staff tipped with glowing crystals that hummed with latent energy. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a bolt of searing light hurtling toward Elias, who barely managed to dodge, the heat singeing the edge of his suit. Elias responded by unslinging his plasma rifle, aiming carefully before firing. The shot struck true, but instead of penetrating Zoendar's armor, it dissipated harmlessly against an invisible barrier. The king smirked, tapping a finger against the shield-like field surrounding him. "Your weapons are primitive," he taunted, his voice resonating even louder in the enclosed space. "But perhaps your resolve is stronger." The second phase of the battle unfolded with relentless intensity. Zoendar unleashed a barrage of attacks, each strike carrying enough force to shatter stone. Elias countered with bursts of plasma fire, attempting to find weaknesses in the alien's defenses. When brute strength failed, he relied on strategy, using the environment to his advantage. Columns of crystal jutted from the arena floor, providing cover as he maneuvered around the king's assaults. Yet, no matter how cunning his tactics, Elias found himself struggling to keep pace. Zoendar's speed and precision were unmatched, his movements flowing like water, impossible to predict. Every blow landed with devastating accuracy, forcing Elias to retreat further until his back pressed against the edge of the platform. Desperation clawed at him, threatening to overwhelm reason. And then, amidst the chaos, a realization dawned. The key to victory did not lie in overpowering Zuin, it lay in understanding him. Elias studied the king's patterns, noting subtle shifts in stance and rhythm. He recalled fragments of conversations during their initial meeting, piecing together clues about Zytherian's culture and values. Honor, resolve, adaptability. These were the qualities Zoendar sought to test. Summoning every ounce of courage, Elias abandoned conventional methods. Instead of engaging directly, he feigned vulnerability, luring Zoendar into a false sense of triumph. The king lunged forward, confident in his superiority, but Elias sidestepped at the last moment, planting his boot firmly against the alien's chest and shoving with all his might. Caught off balance, Zoendar stumbled backward, his shield flickering momentarily. Seizing the opportunity, Elias fired a concentrated burst of plasma at the exposed gap. The impact sent Zoendar crashing to the ground, his weapon skittering out of reach. For a brief moment, silence reigned, broken only by the labored breathing of both combatants. But the king was not defeated. Slowly, deliberately, Zoendar rose to his feet, brushing dust from his armor as if the fall had been inconsequential. His expression hardened, resolve burning brighter than ever. "Impressive," he admitted, his voice tinged with begrudging respect. "But the trials are not yet complete." With a wave of his hand, the arena transformed once more. Walls of energy surged upward, enclosing them in a dome filled with swirling vortexes of light and shadow. Within these chaotic currents, figures began to materialize, phantoms wielding weapons identical to Zoendar's. They circled Elias, their forms shifting and multiplying until he was surrounded by dozens of adversaries, each mirroring the king's relentless ferocity. Elias clenched his fists, determination stealing his resolve. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a test of spirit, a chance to prove that humanity could rise to meet even the most daunting challenges. Lyrian watched from the shadows of the observation balcony, her luminous eyes fixed intently on the spectacle unfolding below. Though her outward demeanor remained composed, her thoughts churned with a mixture of emotions she struggled to suppress. The sight of Elias battling her father stirred something deep within her, a mixture of admiration, fear, and an unsettling curiosity about the strange creature who dared to challenge the ruler of Zytherian. She had grown up immersed in the traditions of her people, where strength and honor were paramount virtues. From childhood, she had witnessed countless warriors tested in the arena, their fates decided by the whims of her father's challenges. Yet none had ever captured her attention quite like Elias. There was a rawness to his movements, a grit that contrasted sharply with the elegant precision of Zytherian combatants. He fought not with the finesse of a master, but with the desperation of someone fighting for something greater than himself. Her fingers tightened around the railing as she saw him narrowly evade one of the phantom warriors, his reflexes pushing him to the brink of exhaustion. She marveled at his resilience, at the way he adapted to each new threat with stubborn determination. It was fascinating. Unlike the stoic discipline of her own kind, Elias embodied chaos tempered by purpose. There was a vulnerability in him, a fragility that made his defiance all the more compelling. And yet, the implications weighed heavily on her. If Elias succeeded, and the thought sent a shiver through her, he would claim her as his prize. The notion filled her with conflicting feelings. On one hand, the idea of being handed over like a trophy rankled against her sense of autonomy. She was no object to be won or bartered, regardless of her father's decree. But on the other hand, she couldn't deny the intrigue sparked by the human warrior. He carried an air of mystery, a depth that transcended the boundaries of their two worlds. What would it mean to leave everything she knew behind? To embrace the unknown alongside someone so fundamentally different? Her musings were interrupted by a soft voice beside her. "He fights well," came the comment, low and contemplative. It was Kaylee's, one of her father's advisors, his translucent form shimmering faintly in the dim light. His gaze lingered on the arena, analyzing the unfolding events with clinical detachment. "For a human, that is." Lyrian turned to him, her brow furrowing slightly. "Is that all you see? A human?" Kaylee's tilted his head, regarding her with an inscrutable expression. "What else should I see? He is an outsider, a representative of a species whose history speaks of conquest and destruction. Do you doubt your father's wisdom in issuing this challenge? No, Lyrian replied quickly, though the hesitation in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. She glanced back at the arena, where Elias was now grappling with multiple opponents, his movements growing increasingly erratic. But I wonder if we truly understand what drives him. He didn't come here seeking glory or riches. He came seeking connection, a bridge between our peoples. And now he seeks survival, Kales countered, his tone sharpening. Do not mistake desperation for nobility, Lyrian. Your father offers him a choice, triumph or oblivion. That is the way of things. Lyrian fell silent, her jaw tightening. She had always respected Kales's counsel, but his words now grated against her growing unease. Was it fair to judge Elias solely by the actions of his kind? To reduce him to a symbol of humanity's flaws when he had shown nothing but courage and adaptability? Or was she simply projecting her own yearning for freedom onto him, romanticizing the idea of escape from the gilded cage of her existence? Her thoughts drifted to her upbringing, to the endless ceremonies and rituals designed to reinforce her role as the heir to Zytherian's throne. Her life had been mapped out long before she could form coherent memories, her future dictated by duty and lineage. Even now, standing on the precipice of adulthood, she felt the weight of expectations pressing down on her. To defy her father's will, to question the sanctity of his decisions, was unthinkable. And yet, watching Elias struggle against impossible odds, she couldn't help but imagine a life free of such constraints. The sound of clashing energy drew her attention back to the arena. Elias had managed to disarm one of the phantoms, sending its weapon spiraling into the void. For a fleeting moment, his eyes met hers across the distance, locking onto her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. In that instant, she felt seen, not as a princess, not as a prize, but as a person. The realization unsettled her, stirring emotions she hadn't allowed herself to confront. Kales noticed the exchange and frowned faintly. Be cautious, Lyrian. Curiosity can lead to dangerous paths. She tore her gaze away, forcing herself to focus on the advisor's words. I am aware of my responsibilities, she said stiffly, though the conviction in her voice faltered. But perhaps we underestimate the value of curiosity, of understanding those who are different from us. Kales regarded her for a long moment before inclining his head. Perhaps. But remember, understanding does not equate to trust. Let us hope your father's judgment proves sound. As the advisor withdrew, leaving her alone once more, Lyrian returned her attention to the battle below. Elias was still fighting, his body battered but unbowed. Each strike he delivered, each evasion he executed, spoke of a refusal to yield, a tenacity that resonated deeply within her. Whether she admired or feared him, she couldn't say. All she knew was that the outcome of this trial would change everything. For him, for her, and perhaps for both their worlds. Elias panted heavily, his muscles screaming in protest as he braced himself for the next assault. The phantoms closed in, their movements synchronized and merciless. He had faced countless dangers in his life, but nothing compared to the sheer relentlessness of this trial. Each swing of their weapons carved through the air with lethal precision, forcing him to push his limits further than ever before. Yet, despite the pain coursing through his body, a spark of defiance burned within him. He refused to let exhaustion dictate his fate. Drawing on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed, Elias launched into a flurry of counterattacks. His plasma rifle, nearly depleted, emitted weak bursts of energy that nonetheless disrupted the phantom's formations. Seizing the opening, he dove forward, rolling beneath a sweeping strike and coming up behind one of the apparitions. With a swift kick, he sent it sprawling, its weapon clattering uselessly to the ground. The others hesitated, their coordination faltering for the briefest moment. It was all the opportunity Elias needed. He snatched up the fallen weapon, its unfamiliar grip humming with latent power. Instinct guided his movements as he swung it in wide arcs, driving the remaining phantoms back. The weapon responded to his touch, amplifying his strikes with bursts of radiant energy that sent shockwaves rippling through the arena. For the first time since the battle began, he felt a glimmer of control. But victory remained elusive. Just as he gained the upper hand, the arena shifted again, the vortexes of light coalescing into a single towering figure, an amalgamation of all the phantoms, larger and more menacing than any foe he had faced thus far. Its eyes glowed with an intensity that pierced through him, freezing him in place. The weapon in his hands suddenly felt insignificant, its weight dragging at his arms. From the sidelines, Lyrian watched with bated breath, her pulse racing as the colossal entity loomed over Elias. She wanted to cry out, to warn him, but her voice caught in her throat. This was no ordinary adversary. It was a manifestation of her father's will, imbued with the collective might of Zytherian's warriors. Defeating it would require more than skill or strength. It would demand a sacrifice. Elias staggered backward, his mind racing. He could feel the strain of the battle sapping his endurance, his vision blurring at the edges. Doubt crept in, whispering insidious thoughts of failure. But then, amidst the chaos, he remembered why he had accepted the challenge in the first place. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for the chance to bridge the gap between two vastly different civilizations. He couldn't afford to falter now. Summoning every shred of resolve, Elias planted his feet firmly on the ground and raised the alien weapon high. The entity charged, its massive form blotting out the light. Time seemed to slow as Elias focused all his energy into a single, desperate gambit. Channeling the remnants of the weapon's power, he unleashed a blinding surge of energy, directing it not at the creature's form but at the core of its being, the source of its immense strength. The resulting explosion lit up the arena, a supernova of light and sound that forced everyone to shield their eyes. When the brilliance faded, Elias stood alone, battered but victorious. The entity had dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind only silence. Zundar emerged from the shadows, his expression unreadable. He approached Elias, who swayed unsteadily but refused to kneel. The king extended a hand, not in aggression but in acknowledgement. "You have proven your worth," he declared, his voice resonating with reluctant admiration. "But the final trial awaits." Before Elias could respond, the arena transformed once more. The walls dissolved, revealing a vast expanse of stars stretching infinitely in all directions. Floating amidst the cosmos was a lone figure, Lyrian. Her gaze locked onto Elias, and in her eyes, he saw a reflection of his own determination. "This," Zuandar said, his tone grave, "is the ultimate test. Will you choose her freedom, or your own?" The silence that followed Zuandar's words was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of energy rippling through the starlit void. Elias stared at Lyrian, her ethereal form suspended in the endless expanse like a beacon amidst the darkness. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, those luminous pools of liquid silver, spoke volumes. They held a mixture of hope and resignation, as if she had already accepted whatever fate awaited her. Elias clenched his fists, his mind racing to process the implications of the king's ultimatum. This was no longer about proving strength or skill. It was about making an impossible choice. To claim Lyrian as his prize would mean taking her away from everything she had ever known, her home, her people, her identity. But to reject the offer outright would be to abandon the mission he had dedicated himself to, leaving behind any chance of forging a connection between humanity and Zytherian. And yet, there was something deeper at play here, a truth that resonated within him with undeniable clarity. The real challenge wasn't about choosing between two paths, it was about understanding what true victory meant. Was it conquest? Possession? Or was it something far more profound? Something rooted in empathy, respect, and mutual understanding? He turned to face Zuandar, meeting the alien king's piercing gaze without flinching. "Your daughter is not a trophy," Elias said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "She's not something to be claimed or given away. If you truly value honor and resolve, then you must see that." Zunar's brow furrowed, his golden armor glinting under the cosmic light. For the first time since their encounter began, the king seemed uncertain, as though Elias's words had struck a nerve. "You dare question my judgment?" he asked, his tone laced with both anger and intrigue. "I'm not questioning your judgment," Elias replied. "I'm questioning the premise of this trial. You wanted to test my worthiness, not just as a warrior, but as a representative of humanity. And now I stand before you, not seeking to take what isn't mine, but offering something greater, partnership. A bridge between our worlds." Lyrian's breath caught in her throat as she listened to Elias's impassioned plea. She had never imagined anyone speaking to her father in such a way, let alone a human. Yet, every word rang true, echoing the thoughts she had kept buried deep inside. Could this stranger truly understand the complexities of their culture, and her own conflicted heart, better than those who had raised her? Zoander stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over Elias. The tension in the air was palpable, the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. Finally, the king spoke, his voice low and measured. "You speak boldly for one who stands on the precipice of ruin. Tell me, human, if I refuse your proposal, what will you do?" Elias straightened, meeting the king's gaze without hesitation. "Then I'll leave this place knowing I fought not just for myself, but for the possibility of unity. My crew and I came here seeking understanding, not domination. If we can't achieve that, then our presence here serves no purpose." For a long moment, Zoander said nothing. His eyes flickered toward Lyrian, who stood silently amidst the stars, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, a genuine one, devoid of mockery or arrogance. "Perhaps," he mused, "you are wiser than I gave you credit for." With a wave of his hand, the illusion dissolved, and the arena returned to its original state. The spectators erupted into murmurs, their voices filled with awe and confusion. Lyrian descended gracefully to the ground, her movements fluid and deliberate. She approached Elias, stopping just a few paces away, her luminous eyes searching his face. "You've done what no other has dared," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the din. "You've challenged the very foundation of our traditions." Elias shook his head, his features softening. "No, Lyrian. I didn't come here to tear down your world, I came to build a bridge. Whatever happens next, it's up to you. Not me, and certainly not your father." Her lips parted as if to respond, but before she could speak, Zoander stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Enough," he declared, his voice carrying authority yet tinged with something akin to regret. "The trials are over. You have proven yourself human. But the decision lies not with me, it lies with her." All eyes turned to Lyrian, who stood frozen in place, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. For so long, her life had been dictated by duty and expectation. Now, for the first time, she faced a choice entirely her own. Stay in the safety of her world, bound by tradition and responsibility, or step into the unknown alongside a man who had risked everything to prove that trust could transcend differences. She glanced at Elias, then at her father, and finally at the crowd of her people watching intently. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I choose." The words hung in the air, pregnant with possibility. Every heartbeat felt like an eternity as Lyrian paused, gathering her resolve. Then, with unwavering certainty, she finished, "To forge a new path, one that honors both our worlds." A collective gasp rippled through the arena, followed by murmurs of disbelief and admiration. Zoandar's expression softened, pride mingling with sorrow as he regarded his daughter. "So be it," he said finally, his voice heavy with emotion. "Go forth, Lyrian. Show them what it means to unite rather than divide." Tears welled in Lyrian's eyes as she embraced her father, the gesture charged with unspoken gratitude and love. When she pulled away, she turned to Elias, her posture radiating quiet determination. "Let us begin anew," she said, extending her hand. Elias took it, his grip firm yet gentle. "Together." As they walked side by side out of the arena, the crowd parted to make way, their gazes filled with wonder and hope. It was the beginning of something unprecedented, an alliance born not from conquest, but from courage, compassion, and the shared desire to transcend boundaries. In the days that followed, Elias and Lyrian worked tirelessly to lay the groundwork for cooperation between their peoples. Challenges arose, as they always do when two vastly different cultures collide, but each obstacle only strengthened their resolve. Through dialogue, patience, and mutual respect, they began to dismantle centuries of mistrust, paving the way for a future where humanity and Zytherian could coexist as equals. And though the journey ahead promised to be fraught with uncertainty, one thing was clear. The bond forged between them, between two individuals willing to defy convention for the sake of unity, would endure. For in the vastness of the cosmos, sometimes the smallest acts of courage hold the power to change everything. Lyrian and Elias stood together on the plateau as their ships prepared to depart, the crimson sky of Zytherian stretching endlessly above them. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, a silent promise of the journey ahead. "You've given me a choice," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of gratitude. "Now, let us give our worlds the same." Elias nodded, his gaze steady. No more trophies. No more trials. Just trust. As they boarded their respective vessels, the crowd of Zytherians watched in silence, their luminous eyes reflecting hope rather than fear. The starships ascended in unison, their trajectories aligning like two halves of a whole. In that moment, the universe seemed smaller, its infinite expanse bridged by the courage of two souls. And as the ships disappeared into the stars, the ripple of their actions began to echo across galaxies, rewriting the rules of what was possible. For unity, they realized, was not a destination, it was a choice made every day.